Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At TurnKey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, TurnKey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. TurnKey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what you can look forward to on this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
The thing is that designing the business model is not everything. The customer deliverable is the first thing, and making our customers happy is so important. But then you got to wrap that into like a good business model and really think about it. And so what I've been doing with folks is trying to do that. And I would tell you, in our business school educations today and whatnot, we don't put any emphasis on business model design. And so what I'm trying to work on is sort of helping schools implement this stuff and helping make business model dynamics much better understood, and so that more entrepreneurs can understand this and more entrepreneurs can be more successful.
You see, Danny, there's a force in the universe that makes things happen, and all you have to do is get in touch with it. Stop thinking, let things happen, and be the ball. Or be the nice guys on business. Either one is good. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Okay, nice guy community. Chris Volk, he knows a thing or two about turning rejection into opportunity. Now, check this out. After being declined by over 300 employers fresh out of college, he packed his 1970 Volkswagen, $500 and a box of rejection letters, and headed to Atlanta. That decision launched a banking career, an MBA, and ultimately a lifetime evaluating and business building. So just understand that. Chris went from analyzing loans to co-founding companies that went public on the New York Stock Exchange, so compelling that even Warren Buffett, yes, Warren Buffett, that guy, came on the board as a larger shareholder. But after leading companies for 10 years, he stepped down to give back and help future leaders. He wrote his first book on the financial ingredients of corporate wealth creation, which are at the heart of the fortunes of billionaires and most millionaires too. He's now embarking upon a video series. I'm excited to chat with him. He's here today. Chris, welcome to the Nice Guys Home Business Podcast.
Hey, Doug, thank you. And thanks for the introduction. I liked hearing about myself.
Yeah, I always talk about my 92-year-old mom. She writes a hell of a good intro, doesn't she?
Oh, no, it's amazing.
Well, I got her on payroll. I got to give her something to do. So let's talk about this. So you didn't initially set out to be an entrepreneur. I got to ask this because I've been an entrepreneur for 40 plus years. What the hell happened? You didn't want to do this. What happened?
We built this company and we were public. I took a company public in 1994 and we grew it for 7 years. And at the end of 2000, GE Capital made a play to buy us. And so we sold the company to GE Capital, which was kind of a cathartic moment when you're selling out to some big company. So, we had 250 employees. GE had 350,000 employees. Wow. So I became part of this giant bureaucracy. And quickly I figured out that there was just no future for me at GE. And they were paying me a lot of money to be there, but I figured that somebody was going to wake up one day and say, why do we have him on board? Like, why is he even here? And so I thought I had to figure out how to get out of there, and do something else. And I had a job opportunity or two in different spots. I mean, we were based in Arizona, so my kids were in high school, and so I thought about moving to Chicago, for example. I mean, I'm a finance guy, so you're typically going to financial markets. Chicago's one of those, and my wife said, "Was this your dream job?" And I said, "No, it's actually not my dream job." And so my former business partner, who founded the initial platform, he'd asked me if I wanted to come hang my shingle with him, and we sort of figure out what to do. So I basically, hung my shingle out with Mort and tried to figure out what to do, and decided to start another company competing with the first company. I mean, so my non-compete was running out, so I decided to work once, let's do it again. So I,
Wow.
got Mort on board, and we went out to raise some money, and ultimately raised $350 million and took a company, took a private company, and a year later we took that public. So it was kind of a fast turnaround going back public again, but we did that. And so 2003 we raised the money. In 2004 we went public, and the answer was, I decided, I'd rather make less money working for myself than more money working for somebody else. I mean, I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're sort of like having this kind of thought process. And the other thing is, I think you get to a point in life where you're going, gee, I have this chance to start a business, and I know enough. I think I could probably pull this off. And if my downside is, I'm working for somebody else. So my downside is I'm going to be, I guess I'm going to quit and work for somebody else. But my upside was I could create a company, and it may or may not make me a rich guy, but it, hopefully makes me a rich guy. And I thought, if I was 75 or 80 years old and I was looking back at my life, I think I was like an idiot for not taking that chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I would look back at myself and say, why you had this shot? Why didn't you take the shot? And I, to me, life is about lots of passages. And one of the passages you go through is whether you want to start a company or not. And I had the shot to do it, and I took it. And the good news was I ended up making more money working for myself. And I think that's the success that drives a lot of entrepreneurs is to be able to have that chance.
Well, I think that's the entrepreneur mindset. It's like, why would I ever, I've been very fortunate over the decades that I've been self-employed as an entrepreneur. And I think about it, and I think I'm gainfully unemployable. I don't think that I could go to work for someone else, or W-2'd, or, if I'm not 1099, I'm nothing. If I'm not 100% commission, I don't feel like I'm earning my keep. But I guess the question is, there's a couple of ways to take this entrepreneurial journey. You can bootstrap a business, you can find VC, you could do many other ways to start a business. So let me ask that: bootstrap or VC? I think I might know your answer. So what is it? What is it, and why?
So it just depends on whether you're doing a small business or a bigger business. So I'm all about bootstrapping a business and creating a company. I mean, if you can have like a huge ownership percentage, that's great. I find that the choices tend to come down to this: that you either own a really big piece of a small pie, or a small piece of a big pie. And most entrepreneurs end up being in that basket where they create a decent company, maybe a smaller company, and they own a lot of it. Or in my case, like if you look up a small piece of a big pie, I probably show up in Wikipedia for that. Like, I owned like less than 1% of store capital. And, by the time I left, well less than 1%, but store capital had a $10 billion equity cap,
Right.
So less than 1%, is some money. So, having done this, I was able to I didn't use venture capital. I used private equity to do it, but same kind of thought process where I'm taking other people's money and in this case, private equity, and helping make that happen, which in my case, the reason I had to do it was because I was creating a real estate based company with like lots of real estate, and real estate's expensive. So if I want to buy like lots of fast food restaurants or veterinary clinics or manufacturing facilities, we even owned some ski hills, and we were just renting them back to all the people that were using them. And if I was going to do that, I didn't have enough money personally to even begin to do that. So you have to go out and raise money from other people to make that happen. When you raise money from other people like that, the difficulty is that you now have another money manager that's kind of involved with you, and they're making big fees off of what they do. So that you're basically, from an economic perspective,
Right.
It'd be nice to cut them out because they're basically taking scrape off the whole platform. And if you could own the whole thing without them, wouldn't that be terrific? But for a lot of companies, it's not really possible. And by the way, for me, like if I could have gone to we had, for example, Arizona Employees Retirement Systems as a pension fund is one of our cornerstone shareholders in Store, the last company I did. And I lined them up, but I knew that they wouldn't be investing with us they would never be a lead investor. I mean, pension funds just typically won't be a lead.
Right.
So if I paired them up, on the other hand, with a big private equity firm, especially one that was already managing AZRS money, the pension fund's money, then now I had a big chance. And so what I did was I raised $500 million, and I had, Arizona pension fund put in 75 million, and I got 425 from the private equity firm.
So what's the difference? And maybe, again, I'm going to ask this question because I don't know the answer, and I apologize if it seems like, oh, well, this is why this answer is the reality of it. What's the difference between private equity, VC, and when you get venture capital or you get private equity, aren't you still answering to someone? Don't you have to have it's hard to shift. It's when you bootstrap. Me and my partner, we've made every decision just over a beer or a cup of coffee, and I don't think it's the same way with private equity or VC, or maybe it is. So can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah. So and think, if you're running a public company, you still have a board of directors and you have shareholders, right?
Right.
So even if you're running a public company and you're the CEO, you kind of have a boss out there, right? But it is a definitely different experience than having a boss.
Yeah.
And as long as you're doing a good job, and you're obviously considered the subject matter expert, so they're looking at you to be the person who's running the stuff, they'll leave you alone. But I would say also that not all private equity firms are created equal. So if you're picking a partner in a private equity firm, it really helps to sort of like understand what the culture is and how they work. Some of the private equity firms can burden you with all kinds of minutia. They're wanting all kinds of reports. They're embedding people with you. They have dedicated people assigned to you. In the case of the private equity firm that we selected, we had none of that. I mean, there was no dedicated person that was just on our account. These were leaders of the firm. They left us alone. Had we not done what we said we would do, I think that they would have paid a lot more attention to us, but we did exactly what we said we would do. And so they let us alone and let us run it.
It's interesting you say that. I think about private equity or even VC and the support that they could also offer you. So I only looked at it for a moment as a negative thing. It's like, well, you got this person or this group of people that are a board that's above you, that's helping you make decisions. The reality of it is we as entrepreneurs only know what's in our sweet spot. Strickland knows systems and processes. He's my partner. Right. I know sales and relationships and podcasting, but I don't really know anything about marketing. And I know a little bit about sales, but not everything about sales. I don't know a lot about operations. And it would be nice to have an equity partner that comes in and says, no problem. This is our sweet spot. We're really great at marketing. We'll help you get to, $10 million or whatever it is. I think that's where most entrepreneurs have their biggest challenge. And I know this is off topic here, but I'm just curious what your thought is. Wouldn't that be a help to someone to have this partner?
Look, you're totally right. I mean, I would say that our private equity partner that we had so the company I created was a company called Store Capital, which stands for Single Tenant Operational Real Estate. So it's acronym. And when I created this company with a team of people, our private equity firm was a firm called Oaktree, where they're out of California. They're now owned by Brookfield, and Oaktree was fabulous. I mean, they were full of really, really smart people. If I had a question, they could really help me. They had a lot of subject matter experts, and I would say that they made us better at what we did. I mean, because you're having to, we were making investments with their money every day, and when you're making investments, there's a certain element of risk to any investment that you make, and you have to articulate to people why it is that you're making those investments, and when you're dealing with very smart people, they set the bar high for articulation of what you're doing, and so these guys were like super smart, and you're having to explain to them, why you're proposing to make certain investments, why we're buying, in our case, certain amounts of real estate, and they made us better at what we do. We got better at explaining it. We got better at analyzing it. We learn some new techniques. And then in many cases, they had a lot of subject matter knowledge on the industries that we were focusing on. So if we had somebody that was, making manufactured homes or something, and we were buying their factory, I mean, they would have an expert in manufactured housing or whatnot. So that's that kind of thing where you can really learn from somebody and make a better decision.
Yeah, I think about it, and I think about all the decisions that both Strick and I make in a vacuum. The two of us, again, having a beer or a cup of coffee or over virtual lunch because he's in Austin, Texas, and I'm in Ojai, California. And we have these conversations a lot of times. What would be the solution to the problem? And because the two of us are sounding boards for each other, we don't have the answers, or we wouldn't have the problem. If we had the answers, we would create the answers. But we oftentimes do bring in experts from outside, whether it's a paid expert or somebody that's sitting on our quote unquote our advisory board. So it is pretty interesting. Okay, thanks for humoring me with that part of the conversation. I want to talk about something that probably many people in our nice guy community, our audience of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and business leaders, really would love to know the answer to, and I think that you probably have the experience with this level of individual. What do billionaires know that the average mortal, the average entrepreneur doesn't? What is it that they can get to that we can't because we just don't have the answers?
Yeah, so billionaires are, billionaires are kind of unicornish, right? In the sense that and I say unicorns, it's supposed to be just unicorns. I mean, in the sense that most billionaires own big pieces of big pies. I mean, somehow they violated all the rules. They didn't own a big piece of a small pie or a small piece of a big pie. These guys own big pieces, and ladies own big pieces of big pies. And so they are dealing with businesses that have several things in common. I mean, they have huge markets. They're not just focusing on Ojai, California, or providing a service for people in Ojai.
Right.
It's going to be national. It's going to be global. All companies, by the way, solve problems of some kind. I mean, and the problem could be, gee, I want to have access to information, or the problem could be, I want to have a sandwich. So it's a restaurant. I want to work out, fitness clubs. I mean, or the problems could be, sending rockets into outer space, right? So they could be just different issues. And so the people that rise to being billionaires are running companies that have just incredibly solid business models typically, and they address really big markets. And so both those things are going to be unusual, right? And then to have somebody do that, but they also end up owning a big piece of that pie is, it's incredibly unusual. But the thing about it is that, if you're a pro golfer playing in the Ryder Cup this weekend, there are fewer of you than there are billionaires, right? So your chances of being one of those guys is actually rare. So those guys are the true unicorns. Billionaires are actually less unicornish than the guys playing this weekend. So,
So do they have a different attitude, a different mindset, or do they not get lost in the minutia? Is there something that they do differently in their daily activities? Plenty of billionaires are taking a lot of time off, but they're also, when they're in it.
I think that billionaires are just like us. They're just like you and me. They are, but they happen to come across. They happen to be in the right place at the right time. There's a certain amount. I mean, there is a certain amount of luck to being a billionaire. I mean, opportunity. They had the opportunity at the right time. They seized it. Most every billionaire in any other life form, in any other at any other time, they probably would have been multi-millionaires. But these are folks that just sort of hit on it anyway at the some right deal at the right time. Some of them micromanage and they're really super knowledgeable about stuff, and they're getting their hands dirty. Some of them are more high level strategic thinkers. So they're just like your typical average businessman. Or lady, but they just focused on this one opportunity that got them to where they are. And I think that most of them were kind of surprised by that. I mean, and if you think about it, like a lot of these billionaires got created in a matter of years. I mean, there are like 10 billionaires that got created in 4 years or less. I mean, so you start from nothing, right? In 4 years, you're worth $1 billion because you had a nice idea. and it's addressed a big market. It's got huge growth potential.
I think in today's environment, technology environment, I think they're probably more prevalent now than ever before, and more. I'm not saying it's easy. I have no idea. You know, you got to get to a thousandth of that to get there. But it's
Yeah.
easier
So
now.
like right. So in my business, I think it's possible to be a centimillionaire. But it's impossible to be a billionaire. Like, and if you look at, people's business, if you look at business models and you look at it in a rational way, like how much you could possibly get to be worth if you're, what would be like the super high bar for financial success, and you can sort of figure that out. But I could never be a billionaire, not in the business that I'm in, but I can't shift that at this point. This is what I know how to do. So,
well, I think you're okay, and I think you're doing very, very well where you are. And let's talk about that for a second. You've spent the majority of your career doing things, growing businesses, and now you're at a point in your career where you're actually providing back to your community. So let's talk about what you're providing back, and let's talk about the model of which you've created. I know you have a whole video series that you have out or you have coming out. So let's talk about that for a second. You started at the starting point you want to go.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, I wrote a book, and it's called The Value Equation, and it's a business guide to corporate wealth creation for entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders. And it's a pretty basic book, but it walks through sort of essential financial fundamentals of running a business. And if you're running a business, it's kind of important to know some basic math. And the good thing about math is it's all middle school math. There's no high level math in business. So it's all basic stuff, but business models really matter. And what I've come to learn is that every single billionaire that you can look at all made their money in business. Virtually every multi-millionaire made their money in business. Most millionaires made their money in business. And so how does that happen? Well, it doesn't just happen. I mean, it's where you take an interesting idea, and then it's a customer deliverable, and then you wrap it inside of a really good business model. And you got to spend some time creating that business model. So like when you think about Sergey Brin and Larry Page are starting Google, academically, they were just finding a better search algorithm, and they were finding a way to rank searches, and they had an algorithm that they liked better than anybody else's, and they thought the market would like it. But the business model took a couple of years to figure out, which is to create the AdWords, right? I mean, that took 2 years to figure out how to do that. So nobody at that point in time understood that web searching could be like a really good business. I mean, It's not just a really good business; it's a great business, But like nobody knew that, right? So the thing is that designing the business model is not everything. The customer deliverable is the first thing, and making your customers happy is so important. But then you got to wrap that into like a good business model and really think about it. And so what I've been doing with folks is trying to do that. And I would tell you, in our business school educations today and whatnot, we don't put any emphasis on business model design. And so what I'm trying to work on is sort of helping schools implement this stuff and helping make business model dynamics much better understood, and so that more entrepreneurs can understand this and more entrepreneurs can be more successful.
So let's talk about how you're doing that, how you're presenting that to the public. I know you're doing some. I think I heard you just say you're doing some teaching down there where are you? Alabama? Did you say?
I'm in Alabama today, so we have a house in Alabama. But I have I toggle between Arizona and Alabama mostly, and yeah, I work with Arizona State University in Arizona, and I'm doing some help with University of Alabama Huntsville here. I got my master's in business at Georgia State, so I try to help Georgia State in Atlanta. But eventually it'll be more schools than that. But in the meantime, I'm doing a video series, so your listeners can look me up, and starting in October, we'll release 2 videos, and then we'll do 2 a month for the foreseeable future. So I've recorded about 18 videos. They're like 5 minutes each, by the way. So if you're short on patience, it's perfect for you. And you can listen to them for 5 minutes each. But they've got a lot of meat in those 5 minutes, so you probably have to listen to some of these things twice to sort of fully get it. But there'll be a series of 25 in the first thread, and then maybe a year from now, I'll do another thread on leadership. But this one is really designed to sort of understand, what it takes to be wealthy. And the richest Americans didn't get there by pinching pennies and saving money and controlling their lifestyle. That's all that. I mean, I don't discourage that because it's so important. But they got there by owning big pieces of they own stock in whatever company they're working for, and they could have been the founder of the company, they could have been the CEO of the company, they could have been just, somebody who's like, in that business, but they own a big piece of stock, and that has propelled their net worth to multi-millionaire status, which, trying to be a multimillionaire just through saving money is really hard. And you probably know that. So.
Got it. And for those of you in our Nice Guy community, we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes to Christopher's his website. It'll be there. And this episode is airing, I believe, in October. So when this comes out, you'll probably have your first two that are already out there. So will it just be go to your website and you'll be able to click on a link on your website?
I should be able to do that. Yes.
That is great. So we'll make sure we put a link in the show notes to the website. If anything changes between now and air date of this episode, we'll make sure that the correct episode or the correct website link is in there. What else should we be telling my Nice Guy community, Chris, that we're not telling them about what you do, how you do it? Because I feel like I've just scratched the surface of the wisdom that you can impart upon our entrepreneurial community.
The only thing I would say is that when I was lined up to do this, and you got just the whole thing about nice guys working in business, I find that business is typically run by nice guys, and you better be a nice guy running a business, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a situation that's a win-win-win type situation for everybody. I mean, so all the best businesses are providing something for their, shareholders, obviously, but then you're really benefiting customers, and you have to be benefiting your employees, your stakeholders.
Amen.
And if it's not a win-win situation, it tends not to be that successful. So I think that there's virtue in business, and I think it's underplayed because, sometimes, people in business come off as being, and especially it's oftentimes like singular people that get cited out for having been unscrupulous in business. And there are people that are like that, but for every one of them, there are, thousands of really hardworking business people out there that are doing their very best to make life good for all the stakeholders they have.
Agreed. I wrote a book 10 years ago called Nice Guys Finish First. And I remember on chapter 1 of that book, I have a quote from Gary Shandling, a comedian that has since passed, but his quote is something like, if you don't think nice guys finish first, you don't know where the finish line is. And that's kind of how I feel. I feel like I've built a business the way that I would want to be treated as a customer, and the way that I would want to be treated as a team member. Who can lead and who wants to lead like a jerk? I mean, for me, it's not a good way to go through life. So I appreciate you saying that.
No, and the other thing I would leave you with too is that as you're trying to make a successful business, the goal is to make it worth more than it costs to create. And that sounds pretty basic, like buy low, sell high. But to do that, there's a technique to how you do that. I mean, you have to generate some returns to do that. And so in a way, like when people are debating about the importance of different stakeholders, shareholders do come first. I mean, they just do, because if you support those guys, then you can help every stakeholder, so that's the thing. So there is kind of an order, in chicken and the egg thing, there's kind of an order to it. But if you have a great business model, then you can make that order work. And certainly all the guys in the Billionaire Club and stuff have made that happen.
Well said. Well, Chris, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your inspiration. I'll make sure we put a link not only to your website, but to your book as well, which is actually on your website as well. So we'll just put the website the website link in there. So thanks, Chris, for being on the show.
Okay. Well, Doug, thank you. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. It's been great to spend time with you.
The Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Chris Volk. All of his information, including access to his website and his book and his video series, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Seriously, it'll only hurt for a minute. Or two. 10 tops.